5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2012, Mr. Tony Wang, the general manager of Twitter in the UK, declared Twitter to be the, quote, free speech wing of the Free Speech Party. I'm concerned that that's no longer the case. This reality has meaningful consequences for veterans and for the health of our democracy. This past February, Quillette published the research findings of Mr. Richard Hananea, who uncovered a systematic pattern of politically motivated censorship on Twitter. From 2006, when Twitter was founded, to May 2015, Hananea could find exactly 0 cases of prominent political persons being suspended or banned from the platform. Just over 2 years later, in December 2017, the number of monthly suspensions of prominent political persons skyrocketed to 9 times higher than May of 2015, and found that prominent conservatives were at least 4 times more likely than liberal persons to be found in violation of Twitter's applied terms of services and banned. While Twitter censors lawful political speech, veterans remain targets of fraud, as this hearing has already well established. According to the AARP, veterans are twice as likely to fall victim to scammers as the population at large. Scammers who operate on various platforms, including Twitter. Yet Twitter faces no legal consequences when veterans are harmed by activities that take place on their platform. That's because Twitter's claim that there is no possible way to moderate illicit content, such as veteran scams, in real time is protected under Section 230 of the 1996 Communications Decency Act. So, Mr. Kane, isn't it quite ironic how can Twitter can argue in good faith that their Section 230 protections can be retained because it does not have the resources or ability to root out illicit material, such as scams targeting veterans, on its platform when the same platform devotes considerable resources and attention to stomping out lawful political speech?
Congressman, thank you for that question. As I mentioned, we have a clear policy addressing scams on our platform, and since January 1st of this year, we've permanently suspended 335,000 accounts for engaging in scamming behavior, not just for the veterans community, but for all community, because again, we have to take a very broad approach in terms of how we combat these threats, which we take seriously. To your earlier point regarding political speech on Twitter, Twitter's purpose is to serve the entire public conversation, not just for one political party, but for the entire globe. And one of the things I'm most proud of in terms of working at Twitter is we embrace diversity and diverse viewpoints, and everyone, whenever we go in to make any policy decision, we all make decisions in the interest of serving the public conversation and not one particular ideal or another.
All right. Mr. Glicker, in your testimony, you alluded to working with law enforcement as they find and prosecute the scammers who engage in impersonation or other deceptive activities. Does Facebook have a specific process for reporting instances of veterans scamming to federal law enforcement agencies?
Congressman, we work with law enforcement to report the threats that we see in a few different ways. When we see scams, particularly recurrent scams where we see someone being targeted, we will work with law enforcement to make sure they have as much information as we can provide. Whenever we see a more scaled foreign operation, for example, something emanating from what could be a nation state, we share that information proactively to make sure law enforcement understands the scope and can take action where appropriate.
That's safe to say that you don't have a specific process specific for veterans.
Congressman, we have processes, and what we found that's most important is the tight relationship between the people who work with law enforcement to make sure that sharing happens most effectively.
Okay.
So
how about this? Can you confirm that Facebook refers 100% of known instances of veteran scamming to law enforcement officials?
Congressman, whenever we see particularly a ongoing or sophisticated operation, we share that with law enforcement.
But if it's not sophisticated, you don't?
We work with them to give them as much information as they can use.
I think you've answered my question. Mr. Glicker, you stated that Facebook has dedicated escalation channels through which individuals and organizations most impacted by impersonation attempts can contact it when they learn of a new case of impersonation or targeting. In essence, the establishment of these channels are Facebook saying that it can't catch everything itself and the user has some level of responsibility. So can you help me understand what my responsibility is to track down a fake @Rep.Jim.Banks account?
Congressman, the reason we have reporting systems is so that if someone sees something, they can get it to us quickly. We proactively investigate to remove these operations. We also build systems like transparency in place to make it easier for users and teams like the team at VVA to find and action these things. What we've found is we can be most effective when we work closely with civil society organizations and governments.
I get it. It's my responsibility. With that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Banks.